So we've talked about the Oklahoma Sooners recruiting class and their transfer portal class, and how the Sooners are one of two teams that can claim a top 10 class in both recruiting and transfer portal acquisitions. But today we're going to focus in on two names in the recruiting class that I think we need to keep on the forefront of our minds because they could be impact players for the Sooners this year. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe that Gavin Sawchuk and or Javonte Barnes could have an impact season for the Oklahoma Sooners? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy the content, like and comment down below. Those interactions are really massive to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all of that, we need to jump right in this because this is a position where Oklahoma needed the depth after last season. Because last season, the Oklahoma Sooners were in a position where they had so much offensive talent, but they experienced a lot of chaos in the running back room. So much so that when the season began, they had two scholarship running backs. And it was really able to hamstring what the Oklahoma Sooners wanted to do on offense for a large portion of their season because they didn't want to have any of those two running backs get hurt. And now they're really in a precarious situation. And that underscores the need for quality depth in college football because football is a physical game. And as an Alabama fan, many of you know before last season, I was contending that the Crimson Tide had, if not the deepest running back room in the nation, certainly one of the deepest running back rooms in the nation. 3 former 5-stars, all running backs being top 10 running backs in their respective recruiting classes. But the injury bug bit, and by the end of the season, there was really 1 or 2 truly healthy running backs out of that entire room, and that was a room that had a lot of depth. So when you're looking at what the Oklahoma Sooners did in recruiting and in the transfer portal, it was so necessary getting in the guys they got. And the cherry on top was the guys they got have the ability to affect change for the Sooners, whether we're talking about through the transfer portal and Tawee Walker, or in recruiting in Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes. But given how I talked about Walker not long ago and how his impact could be felt for the Oklahoma Sooners, now we need to do the same for Sawchuk and Barnes, because these two guys are intriguing prospects. And we'll start with Gavin Sawchuk, because Gavin Sawchuk has got home run speed. He's the type of dude that if you give him an inch of wiggle room, it could be your last mistake and he could be gone. That's the type of game-changing speed that Oklahoma could utilize and really keep a defense off balance when you look at the talent they have on roster, specifically with some of the running backs they already have. And I'm really interested to see what Gavin Sawchuk is able to do once he gets on campus. He's a running back that I think could provide the Sooners a lot of versatility, but he is not alone in that because Javonte Barnes is a running back to keep your eye on as well. 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's just as likely to go around you as he is to go through you, and he certainly has the ability to do both. So whenever you're looking at the stylistic differences of the running backs you got, that right there in and of itself is something I believe to be a net positive. Because I'm constantly talking about stylistic differences in different rooms, mainly the wide receiver room, and how if you have stylistic differences in that room, you can really keep a defense off balance based on which receivers you put on the field. In Oklahoma's case, in the running back department, you have speed, you have sizzle, and then you have some power into it. So a defense has to account for every type of run because it could happen to them. But it's really not important talking about the running back acquisitions Oklahoma has got if we don't understand how Jeff Lebby could utilize them, because there is a new play caller in town. And this is where it gets surprising. Because last season, if we compare Ole Miss and OU's rushing numbers, I think some people would be surprised to find out that if we just listed them, Kennedy Brooks would actually have the most touches out of any player, whether in an Ole Miss uniform or in an OU uniform. Kennedy Brooks comes in with 198 carries. The next closest on the list is actually Matt Corral with 152, the quarterback for Ole Miss. But it's the carry breakdown that is a staunch difference between how Jeff Lebby ran the ball and how Oklahoma ran the ball last year. Because when we look at the OU breakdown of numbers, if we're only accounting for individuals that had more than 15 carries, Oklahoma had 5. And of those 5, you had Kennedy Brooks getting the lion's share at 198, Caleb Williams coming next with 79, Eric Gray with 78, Spencer Rattler with 43, and Marcus Major coming in at 15. And also important to note, when you look at the receptions amongst the running backs, you had Kennedy Brooks getting 9 receptions and Eric Gray getting 23. And if we look on the other side of the aisle at Ole Miss, it's a staunch difference. As I said, for Ole Miss, the leading carrier was your quarterback, Matt Corral, but it's the carry breakdown of everybody else after that. Because for Ole Miss, Jerrion Ealy had 133 carries. Snoop Connor had 131 carries. Henry Parrish Jr., 105 carries. Luke Altermeyer, 21 carries. And Kentrell Bullock, 17 carries. And if we're looking at the reception breakdown in that, Jerrion Ealy had 32 receptions. One running back for Ole Miss had as many receptions as the entire running back core for the Oklahoma Sooners had. And then that's not alone. Snoop Connor added 13 more receptions on top of that, and Henry Parrish Jr. added 21. So what we can see is, even though one running back didn't get the vast lion's share of carries under Jeff Lebby, he was able to spread the ball around to multiple different running backs. And I think that was a portion of the Oklahoma offense that was really surprising to me, is how much Eric Gray wasn't utilized in the manner I thought he would be. He only had 23 receptions compared to Jerrion Ealy's 32, and Eric Gray was an individual that this coaching staff for the Sooners was lauding once he got on campus because of his versatility. The staff said he had the ability to affect the game in multitudes of ways. We just never really got to see him get the opportunity to do so. And so I bring this to your attention because this is where depth becomes very important. With Oklahoma having guys such as Eric Gray, Marcus Majors, and now you add in a Gavin Sawchuk, a Tawi Walker, and a Javonte Barnes to go along with a Jaden Knowles, now you're completing the picture of a room that Jeff Lebby can utilize multiple individuals out of that room. Whether we're talking Eric Gray, who I absolutely believe we will see be more involved in every aspect of this offense, both in traditional run sets and catching the ball out the backfield, or it's Gavin Sawchuk, Javonte Barnes, Marcus Major. The reason I bring all of this up is to show the carry breakdown difference to which Jeff Lebby utilized as compared to what Oklahoma utilized last season. Now, in fairness, like I said, Oklahoma was thin at the running back position, but even if we go back to 2020, the carry breakdown doesn't split as nicely as it does for Ole Miss during the 2021 season, in which multiple running backs had over 100 touches. And that's going to be interesting to see, is how can Jeff Lebby continue getting so many guys touches now that he's in Norman, because now that's a room that they've addressed the issue of depth, adding in 3 guys who can legitimately make a positive change for the Oklahoma Sooners, and now he has the ability to have more depth in that room, a room which Lebby utilized to a massive degree at Ole Miss. But having said all of that, I'm very interested in hearing from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe that Walker, Gavin Sawchuk, or Javonte Barnes could have an impact year for the Oklahoma Sooners? That's it. See ya.